75 Board of Education will now come to order at 7:02, or sorry, 6:32. I'm used to 7. Secretary, please call the roll.
Ellie.
Here.
Rose.
Here.
St. Clair. Here. Kitsky is not here. Gallegos.
Here.
Finger Hut here. Village here.
Here.
Okay, so we have a short agenda tonight because it's a special meeting. We're gonna do consent agenda to hire some people before the school year starts, and then we're gonna, Lisa's gonna, I'm assuming you're leading the equity committee discussion, or the
I
three
would
of you
say
are
no,
leading
it's
the
the
equity?
threes.
Okay, the 3 of you.
of
But
us.
before we get to the agenda, we always have citizens' comments. And I have a statement that I need to read before we always do that. The Board of Education welcomes citizen input. Citizens are reminded to limit their comments to 3 minutes, and also that matters regarding employees or confidential student matters will not be allowed, nor will typically the board will not respond. And we have one person in person tonight. It's Teresa Casera. Teresa, will you come up to the podium and please introduce yourself?
Good evening. My name is Teresa Kasurka. I'm the parent of an incoming kindergarten student and a soon-to-be 4-year-old. I'd like to sincerely thank all of you here tonight for your dedication, the extensive time that you have put in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic for the good of our students, the district employees, and the community at large. I also would like to praise the teaching staff of District 75 for their tireless efforts developing lessons, new approaches to instruction from the very first days of the pandemic until planning for the new year that welcomes all the students back in just a few short weeks. In the last few days, I've written to many of you my concerns in extensive length about the requirements for students to wear masks. I understand that it's a developing policy, that a lot of information is coming out as we speak, but I just felt like I needed to put a face to the name, and I wanted to present my concerns. I appreciate the response to my concerns that I presented, but I continue to be concerned that masks are still only strongly encouraged, especially for the student population under 12, who we all know are not eligible yet to be vaccinated. I have read multiple times the CDC guidance for COVID-19 prevention in K-12 schools to make myself more aware, as I know that you guys are flooded with information and resources more than I have access to. I know that the wording does not include that there is a mask mandate, and that it does not state, sorry, that masks are required. However, in the 14-page document that I've read, it seems clear that apart from vaccination, wearing masks is the most effective way to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 and the extremely contagious Delta variant. The mitigations that the district so far has shared include enhanced cleaning and disinfecting procedures, 3 feet social distancing guidelines, and the promotion of hand washing. And I hardly see that as effective as the consistent and the correct use of masks by people who are not fully vaccinated, and especially important in schools where students are not eligible to be vaccinated. I urge you to clearly take a stand with the CDC, Lake County Board of Health, American Academy of Pediatrics, and all the other medical experts, and require masks for students as we begin the school year in a few weeks. Additionally, I would request and hope to see a very visible and easily accessible hub of information on all district and school web pages where parents can go to access the most recent information about COVID-19, the district policies, and any updates regarding COVID procedures. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Is there anyone online that would? Okay, excellent. Okay, thank you, Teresa. I'm just going to read a statement from the board that Lisa and I worked on during the day today, just so everyone is aware. The Board of Education would like to thank those who have taken the time to communicate their views in a spirit of respect and civility. We have read and thoughtfully considered all of your emails. We respect that varying viewpoints exist and believe all voices can contribute to the understanding needed to make the decisions that are best for the welfare of our students. We appreciate parental involvement in all aspects of the lives of our students, and we look forward to your continued meaningful contributions throughout the school year. So we did get a lot of emails, and just wanted to let people know that we hear them and we want what's best for all the students. So thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. And the consent agenda is really just a personnel report. I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Is that right?
Right.
Right. I will second. Secretary, please call the roll.
Rose.
Yes. Sorry.
That's okay. Polly.
Aye.
Gallegos.
Aye.
Figurehead. Aye. Pelletier.
Aye.
St. Clair.
Aye.
Kitsky is not present.
Excellent. Dr. Morris, can I just ask, are we going to be posting for some of the positions that we had resignations for?
Do the resignations, yes, we would see.
Thank you. Okay, then the only other item on the agenda is the representative update, the special board committee on equity.
Great, so, and I will ask Freddie, Christie and all the board members, let's tag team this, let's just have a conversation, let's not, I wish we had a whiteboard, I forgot to ask, or a flip chart, we could take notes if we wanted and diagram stuff out, but, we thought the purpose of our first meeting was to set some of the logistics and formalities around the committee. So for example, what does our future meeting schedule look like? Discussing record keeping between us, who wants to take, do we want to alternate taking notes? What kind of resources do we want to bring to the committee when it's formed and full? And how do we want to store that? So we had kind of an ad hoc folder before on Google where people would just put in random, articles, and we tried to keep it organized. It didn't, we don't have much there now, but we can comb through that and maybe reorganize it, take stuff out, add stuff in. So just to give you a flavor of kind of what we had done before, just informally. And then the most important piece is, how do we want to approach community input? And we talked at various stages about numbers on the, the committee that we would add from the community, who that might be. So, and then any other kind of thoughts that we had, we could start talking about tonight. So with that, we can start off maybe with, what our future schedule looks like. What do you think is, if you want to be involved, is going to personally work for you? And then with the idea that, when we set the schedule for people outside the board and the community members, what do you think is reasonable and a reasonable time lane to do this? Once a month, twice a month, on Mondays, in the evenings, those sort of things.
As a school board, we meet once a month. So do we want to meet also once a month, or is that too frequent? I'm not sure.
And maybe that's a question, we circle back to after we talked about, what do we want to accomplish? We have drafts of a policy, we have a whole packet of other policies we can look at. I think, in my opinion, and please correct me, some of you may have been through this before, some of it is around the definitions. I think we need to set definitions and things like that. So, working on the mission vision statement, that can take more time than you think, looking for the right words, the right phrasing, things like that.
I don't know that we need to meet more than once a month, but I think, because you mentioned once or twice. I don't know. In my feeling is that twice a month might be a little too much.
Oh, no, I would agree. I was just tossing it out
No,
there in
I hear
case we you know.
Sure.
We
Um,
did want that aggressive of a schedule, and then we would, again, tag team who would be attending, but I think it'll maximum once
Yeah.
personally would be fine.
And especially if we're going through initially the definitions and things like that. I think once a month makes sense, but we can always step back and say, hey, maybe we don't need to meet for, 2
Yeah.
months, and we can always do that as needed.
But I thought, yeah, to have it out there so when people, we ask them to apply or they join, they know what, the expectation.
Um, As long as I know in advance, I can schedule just about anything. I've said many times before, Tuesdays are kind of difficult in my family, but getting a little easier because the conflict we had on Tuesdays has now committed to being on Zoom for the year. So that's another ease.
I mean, personally, I
so.
think everybody would agree we wait Fridays, Friday evenings. Kevin, I know you have conflicts later we go in the week and
Yeah,
depending on, how
Yeah.
active you want to be involved, we can toss out Mondays, see what.
Mondays are fine.
I guess the one thing I'd ask you is, as a board, when you established your committees, it was to do a lot of bulk of the work, to bring it back to the board. So I think maybe, at least it's reestablishing who are the primary committee members, you want to have it, so they wanted to be on it. Have that schedule built around those individuals first. That was gonna be their role, so that it's just hard. Schedules for some.
Mondays are
This time, right?
at noon. No,
Zoom?
What?
I'm joking.
Zoom?
No, I think evenings,
Yeah.
yeah. Afternoon or evenings is fine. Whatever works. Evenings are generally easier because I know court's not in session. So, Not the only thing I can count on these days.
You
I
want,
think 6 is earliest I would feel comfortable with.
6 is kind of early.
6:30 or 7 was fine,
6:37 is fine. That's even better.
much like our meetings here. That works for me.
You want to say 6:30, so we're fresher. In theory. And I would imagine 2 hours, or how aggressive do you want to be? Or we can flex it and say, you know what, we know this topic is gonna take a long time to get through. Please expect to be 3 hours, whatever. And I think that's the corollary to all this, that we have really set agendas and a schedule.
If we're gonna do Mondays, would we want to do like the first Monday of each month, the second Monday, or how would we,
I have calendars.
Okay.
I didn't
well,
pass them out or send it in advance, but I know you
Most
guys
of
all have
our-
phones, but.
most of our board meetings here are, which is it third Tuesday? So does it make sense to maybe do the second or first? Well, the only reason I'm apprehensive about first is like Labor Day is gonna always be that, a lot of those Monday holidays, but I guess starting in February that some of them can go into that too, so.
So you're thinking of time, I think one of the structure of the meeting I'd ask the board to consider is the format. If you're gonna want the meeting always streamed, that means you're gonna require always our tech staff. So that's pulling them in evenings. So if you're talking about back to back and like Monday, this committee meeting, then going into a board meeting, just wants to be conscious that we're asking them to pull overtime back to back. So point being, if you want the flexibility more of days, I can just share with you, if you're not streaming every one of the committee meetings, they don't need to be here. Flexibility is much easier to be able to work for you, because there is the setup that goes through to make this take place.
And is the 120 meeting typically the first Tuesday of the month?
It's usually the second
Second.
Tuesday.
So at the first Monday of the month, then it would conflict with that Monday, Tuesday, back to back, like you were
Correct.
saying.
Typically,
Okay.
first and third weeks are the non-board meeting weeks.
Isn't ours,
But we're the third.
we're the third and fourth,
So two
depending
and
on.
four.
One.
There are some meetings, it just depends,
Depends.
because there are a few that flip for ours, likely for 120s as well. I don't have theirs in my calendar.
This month's 10 and 24. September is, yeah, September goes first week, third week. I think if you want to really want to do it on Monday, we just find the Mondays where it's not backing up.
That's fine. To that end, do we want the committee meetings to be strict? Clearly, they're gonna be open meetings because there will be more than 3 of us. Goes without question. Do we want to have them streamed, or do we need to have them streamed more than wanting them?
Maybe it's kind of an open question, because what if we get community members that like want to participate, but can't make it in time or whatever, and so I think it maybe we just play it by ear or make it a standard thing, and then we can cancel it out. I mean, I know after you post it.
Right. I think for scheduling purposes, it probably makes sense to be consistent so that the tech staff and whomever can schedule it, and not wanting to be pessimistic, but as we go into the fall and the winter, if anyone has to quarantine, if numbers rise, if we've already got it set that way, then we don't have to adjust and deal with that. That's another option. Well, I hope we don't need to, but
Or it could be weather, you know. you
Yeah,
never
lots of
know,
reasons,
yeah,
right,
lots of
right.
reasons.
that would be the only reason I would see that we may want to have it streamed. Otherwise, I like the board meetings to be streamed, but if it's a imposition on the tech staff, it is a priority of prioritizing things. I don't know that this is a priority meeting that needs to be streamed, but I could see that there could be some members of the community that would like to participate that makes it accessible, and I recognize that. I'm fine with that too, so.
Well, we could go with the default is yes, and then adjust as we get settled.
As far as note taking, I have no problem if we switch it. If you want me to just do it, I can do it.
Oh, yeah, that's another good point, yeah, so that was, we can switch off or
Yeah.
compare notes, and then we can trade off who's writes the official
Typing it or
notes
whatever,
based
yeah.
on.
I'm sure we can do a template and then just go with it, yeah. Because that's one of the caveat, because we're agreeing to take that on, so we don't further burden on it. and that's
Right.
No problem.
I was willing to take the Zoom one, because I used to do it at work, but, you know.
I have an
know
account
there's
too,
more
but I can't
involved with
necessarily put it
posting and
up.
this and all that.
Yeah.
What?
I said I have an account too, but I don't know that that's necessarily how we're gonna, so.
So I'm sorry, going back, we're talking Mondays, and did we decide on average the first week of the month, and then we were
I think we're gonna set a schedule, yeah. I
Set
mean,
a schedule and then come back with
Yeah.
a review. Okay.
Just
So
making
that it
sure
doesn't
back up
conflict.
to,
Yeah.
doesn't back up to another 4 weeks.
So that's another thing I think is important to keep us on task, is deciding who's gonna do what, so I can take that to do, of putting out, you know, planning that out and then sending it back for confirmation to everybody who wants to look at. So that'll be my to-do.
So I just have a question about streaming though. I'm processing on my head, sorry. So if is the purpose just to have it available for community members that are going to be on the committee and just have that flexibility, or is it just, because if that's the case, isn't it easier to not plan on not doing it so that the tech staff can just, and if we have to pivot because of quarantine or weather, or 2 of us can't make it, then we just ask, obviously coordinate it to have it not. Because if we're gonna stream it, but then there's nobody on it
Right.
and everyone's here, then why are we streaming it? I can just, that's kind of,
We have to have public comment because it's an open meeting, right? So.
But they could attend here.
Yeah.
right, they can just attend that, you know.
It could still be, the agenda could still be posted, just like in the olden days.
Yeah, that all
With the
standardized.
notice,
correct.
yeah.
It's easier almost just that, hey, we are gonna need it. Because.
Yeah.
We're
What
just
is-
quarantining and.
What is
there's
the
a
lead
travel
time we would need in order to
Set up.
set up that if we went with the default of not streaming it except when needed?
Well, it's probably out there schedule.
Right, I mean, we could stream, as long as they know it's streaming, so for example, if the meeting is scheduled on Monday, we have to post everything by Thursday. So we have to just at that point create it, and then, so I would say no later than Wednesday or
So the
Thursday.
Wednesday
because
before the meeting, we
everything
would have
is
to
on
determine if they.
Thursday.
Sure, or even back it up a week more, just to allow a week before.
When-
Yeah.
That's
To
fine.
allow, you know, and if you guys aren't available, then figure something else out, you can move the date or put out the person's flexible.
I think that would make sense.
Let's take the next easy one, record keeping, do we want a shared resource repository, not only for resources, but kind of for our minutes?
Like a Google Drive that we can all access. Yeah, I think that makes
Oh,
sense.
yeah.
And let's make sure we're understanding that too, because that would be in all committee members, so we have to be careful we're not. there's more than board members, making sure whoever we bring on understands the purpose and intent. They can't, we don't want, you know, community member one asking us a question at Google Drive.
Well, we're not gonna be using it as a primary communication tool, right?
It's
That's
just,
what you're saying.
yeah.
It's right, it's like an information sharing and
Yeah.
where to find information.
So we need a to-do on that. And again, I'm happy to take that, and set that up, unless somebody else.
So many different ways I can do that. Flip and share with everybody.
Well, and then we talk about, you know, security around it too, because you can access it either via a link that somebody shares or just by their email, right? So.
It depends on how it's shared.
Sure. You know, I mean, we can, I'm gonna look for it, but, I think the next part then is talking about community members and other members on this, you know, maximum numbers we want. I'm gonna go find a good box of notes or something. Find it, I can even share draft at one point. That's when we said, you know, what staff we wanna.
Build a policy.
Yeah, well, there was also the part about who we're envisioning.
Yeah, at the bottom, we had kind of put
Yeah.
that. how many- where's the next one?
Okay, it's February? No. Okay, I found it. I'm going to share this all. Thought I had the projection. So back then, we had one member of the Board of Education and an alternative superintendent, two other administrators, certified and non-certified staff members, and at least 5, so no more than 10 members of the community.
That's what I have.
So we only have one member of the board then anticipated being on there, but that was before.
That was,
Yeah, but we changed. it,
yeah,
so
we
we're
changed that,
okay.
yeah.
So,
You know, again, let's reassess everything. We want 3 administrators. Do 3 administrators really want to get involved? You know, I think looking to the next meeting, Kevin and I had talked about him giving an overview of what the internal committee has done and their goals. So, you know, again, maybe that's not necessarily an element. They only participate, you know, as guests, or we could ask them as resources. So, you know,
I would think one of the things, because it's the policy piece, it's really driven by user board and getting feedback. So what I would do is based off whatever we have for meetings or agendas, if I think something might apply more or an administrator can add more value to our meetings, I didn't ask them like, do they come in, but I would be your point person to who we want to pull in for that. I'd be fine if we're one.
I think that works. So you would be part of it regardless, and then it's just a matter of whether additional people from the admin would be pulled in as needed, not necessarily being standing members. That I certainly think that's fine.
I don't know if the same question applies to staff. You know, if they have opportunities to get involved already, they need another one, is it, you know, I'm not, and some of it came from prior board members who were asking for more diversity of staff to be involved, so.
I think it makes sense to have at least one non-administrator staff person involved. I'm not against more, but I guess depends on the level of interest among the staff. I mean, if we have a couple that want to be participating, I certainly don't want to turn anyone away. We don't need 10, for example, but you know, but if 2 or 3 want to, I don't want to exclude anyone, but I certainly don't want to add more to somebody's plate to make them feel like they have to.
I certainly think there'll be a handful of people that don't want to participate. We'll be doing that.
Now, how are we planning to open this up? Are we like taking applications from staff or
That-
you know,
that's-
gauging interest or?
Yeah, that's kind of the next question. Community members, like,
Right.
what kind of what does the application process look like? What do we want to ask? That was what I thought we would get to next.
I'm sure we got that.
No, this is supposed to be.
With the staff, like a process, if that's what you were talking about. Eric's on the Delt committee. I think one of the things to keep things at least in sync with sharing ideas of what's happening. I would say we reach out to a couple of our staff that are on the Delt committee.
Yeah.
And ask them to be willing to be part of it.
Yeah, there's already more than a handful of people working on that group already that I'm sure would want to continue doing that and sharing those ideas over with us. There's also a lot of goals that they're already working on that they've set through their committee that I think, you know, we can collaborate on and support them, and they might need our support in one way, you know, vice versa.
That's what we envision, because we don't want to be recreating everything that's happening over there, but we want to make sure there's a collaboration and ability to focus on the policy with some input from not only community members, but that committee. So however that, how many members are part of that committee?
Well, I think on the document you sent us, well, that's both districts, so there was like 20.
Yeah, there's 32 at the max. I believe we had roughly, it was about split, so it's probably at least 12, 75 staff.
So do we want to call it then adult representation rather than, so that being different than regular staff?
I would think so, because they still bring that same value for being in the classroom as a teacher. Yeah, I mean, the goal is to look for input. So I think we're trying to find staff that are willing to do that. That's the area that we know we have people that are pretty sure we probably want to join in. So I don't know if I'd name it any differently or how we name it really. It's up to you.
But I guess the question is, are we restricting staff participation to only adult members?
So
I don't know that we would get more than who's already
Yeah.
participating in. the
Well,
group.
I don't know,
Yeah.
we don't know what your process was to get involved, for.
I don't know what the process was to start it over D75. I was approached at 120 to join, so I don't know how it started over D75, but I would guess that the 14 that are on the list are the ones that are gonna wanna continue doing it.
That seems to make, I mean, obviously,
Outside of that group.
I'm sorry. No, no, no.
Yeah, I was just saying, I don't know that we get anybody outside of that group that's already signed up to work.
And what I would just say is, it's not as though we're keeping it a secret that we're doing it, so if somehow somebody
Yeah,
reaches out to
absolutely.
us,
Yeah,
who's
it'll be
not part of
part of
that, and wants to be
broader
part of that, you know. Again, not looking to turn anyone away. But I can see the point that if those that have an interest that have volunteered for that that's probably the group we're looking for to pull from. And so do we want to say, do you want to aim for like 2?
That was kind of-
2 to 3, I don't know.
Let's see, it's-
Yeah.
I don't know of this group. So teachers we haven't yet, so I don't know how many teachers we have from this pool of 14 here, but.
Committee members, sorry, community members. What did we have before? I mean, to me, 5 seems like a really nice round number, but I don't know.
It's 5, no more than 10. so.
Yeah, I mean,
That
I
seems
think
reasonable.
the idea
Yeah,
was to
that's
give us flexibility based on interest without having. Let's say there's 11, I guess we
Yeah.
could
Yeah.
figure out,
I think 5 to 10 is a good target though.
then identifying people and making it known. So we've kind of, too bad Kevin left, because we talked about, just in general, the communications gentleman, yay. We were talking in a pre-meeting with Kevin about how, to better get word out in general, an interest in board meetings and board work, getting people to run, and, we were like, well, because of that, I started putting it on, Mundelein village events or something like that, and, to generate, so I think we'd be looking for you too, to talk with you about your ideas about how things are today, maybe your vision where we're going and how we can better reach people with some, like for this initiative, how do we get people that we haven't traditionally maybe seen and but we want, their input.
Well, like how to,
Yeah,
How to find
how to solicit them, then we can get to like, well, what questions do we want to ask them to get them, to screen, interview, whatever we want to call the process.
I think it starts with a clear vision or objective to let them know what our purpose is and why we're asking for their input. And know what they're signing up for, and what they're getting involved in.
Right. Because we can't just say, hey, come be part of an equity committee, because that's gonna be, there's something different to everybody.
back to our definitions.
Yeah, we want.
Terms.
Is it to look at board policy together? Classrooms or? Just like we said, we're gonna take it every which way if it's not clearly stated.
So in the document I sent you, we had some.
Share time drive or to
Email.
Did you get it?
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the overarching goal for this community is at the committee, at the end of this, to have a recommended draft board policy to then bring to the board.
Yeah,
Um,
so it could be something like, exactly what you said, the purpose of the committee is to draft our equity policy, to craft it and
Craft or propose,
craft
Because
and
it's-
propose, yes.
until it's approved by the board. It's not the policy. But yeah. Propose or recommended, however, however we want to phrase that.
And we could have a statement that says equity means different things to different people. This is why we want the community's input.
I think an important part is you develop that instead of finding the clear roles. I think When Keaton said, like, says, you want people to, I think people need to understand they're giving input. And what they're giving input on may not be recommended, right? It could be taken in as a whole. My assumption would be it's taken as a whole. And you as the board that are guiding this committee are taking it in and formulating what your definitions would be, what you're looking for outcomes to be. Okay, for us administratively, for you to have me take down our buildings. So that you make sure people aren't coming in and they're gonna say, I want it to be this X definition for your, this is what it means for curriculum and social studies. I think that's the part you as a board are gonna have to make clear for the people participating, so they know just because they say it, it doesn't mean it's happening.
So we're getting towards the elements of a purpose the statement of purpose. And we don't need to leave today with it perfect, but we can at least have something on paper that we can all respond to, or yeah, want to just limit it to the key people, or is it everybody? I think our intention was always to make it broad, as many people.
Well, because otherwise you could have, like, for example, if you had 3 of us on the committee doing all this work, meeting with the community, drafting all this, doing this and bringing it to the board to find that
Yeah.
2 of the board members who didn't participate in the committee
Yeah.
don't like it, aren't going to vote for it, they're going to be very unhappy with it. That's not going to be a good outcome
Mhm.
for any of us. Those that put time in, those that feel excluded because we did whatever. I don't think that accomplishes
It's just
anything.
different than how we review the other policy changes. The other, that's sometimes just reading footnotes and.
It's just minor tweaks.
It's minor tweaks
This is
or
the initial crafting.
updates based on legal whatever.
Right.
And it's the purpose of that work of the policy committee is different in my
Well, 'cause
mind. than
The
this.
policy committee is, on that basis, is just to revise existing policy based on technicalities and Google changes and things like that. This is different because we're actually crafting a policy on equity that doesn't yet exist in our
I
policy.
mean, we've
manual.
had 1 or 2 policies that have come out that are new, but they were based on some, state law or something. So this is kind of unique in that it's custom.
It's a novel one.
It's districts are opting to have it, but they're not required, and, so it's.
But for our district, it's a novel one. That's what we're trying to create it. We don't want to just have it only reflect the 7 people who were sitting on the board. We're trying to get the stakeholder input from the community at large so that
Right, and then some of what we'll share in the Google folder that Eric's gonna do is there's some information we had. We're gonna for catch-up purposes, there is some stuff from Illinois Association of Boards that are
School, IASB.
IASB, about how to go about doing this and how they view their role and our role and all that, nice guidelines, so what we were trying to do when we started this back in February was kind of follow those guidelines, recommendations. So part of so there's a purpose statement, defining the time commitment, having some sort of statement around once a month, 2 hours, 3 hours, or whatever.
When do we think is our target for having this completed? I mean, I get that it's going to depend on how the meetings go, how the, involvement goes. But I mean, are we hoping 3 or 4 months, 6 months at the end
I
of the
could
school
see
year?
it
I don't know.
being, once we get people, being fairly straightforward, but then I can also see it getting pretty involved. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not even in the workplace.
I just
I've been
think-
involved with crafting a policy that was
Right.
always done by other people, so.
Well, and I think us as a board would have to kind of have an ideal timeline in mind so that we can guide then the committee, because we can have
Yes,
meetings till the end of
exactly,
time and keep,
exactly, yeah.
going through and hashing and rehashing and doing that, but that doesn't get us necessarily to the goal. So in my mind, I would think that, by the spring, I would hope we'd be able
Oh,
to bring
yeah, I
something
would
to the
hope,
board.
yeah, I would be afraid of saying, oh, we think we could do it in 6 months and then we need 3 more, but I think.
I'm just, just that way we can, if somebody asks, how long would this time commitment, how many meetings would I be expected to attend and for how long? A lot of people may not be unwilling to attend a few meetings to get to the bottom, but if we're asking for like a year-long commitment, we should tell them that up front. I think that might be overkill, but maybe I'm wrong. That's why I wanted to.
Well, then we can exceed expectations. We done early.
Right.
Oh, wait, we don't get performance. Well, I guess we do in some sense, we do.
Well, what definition?
Which they just changed and I still can't keep track of how they're like, yeah, but yeah.
There's already a draft. It's not like we're starting from scratch.
Yeah, and there's many other versions that we could share.
There were
because-
3 or 4 drafts,
Yeah,
I
I
think, that
mean, our draft picked from like
a few.
a few.
And again, that, some of that reflected some of the prior board members,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's why we need to go through it and see if we're
Okay.
all on the same
So
page.
we're back.
Yeah.
To Mondays, 2 hours, once a month till spring, so approximately.
I need to ask you a couple of questions.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
go.
He's waiting for us to shut up.
Well,
Sorry.
no, I apologize if all this has been discussed already and I'm not understanding it. But the board right now has 3 people on the committee.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay,
assigned.
signed, okay. So, in the charge of this committee is to develop a District 75 policy
Draft policy.
on equity. That's going to be brought to the board for approval and then implementation through the administration. So if I'm not quite understanding the where you're going, like picking days and I know I'm not at the committee, so if I'm out of line, just say, hold up. But it seems like there's some things that you're kind of getting ahead of yourself on, because if you're gonna be picking people to be on the committee, every time you're gonna be meeting, you're talking about, well, what Monday is good for you or what Monday is good for you. Each time you have a meeting, you're gonna have more people coming in and saying, well, wait, that doesn't work.
So are you
So some of
saying
the
we should
things
hold
that-
off setting the calendar and just
Well, I think the
say
first
we're
thing-
looking for this time commitment?
Those details, I think, should be determined by your committee, the total whole committee. The things you should be talking about first is who is the committee? And having all of those people now sitting at the table, and now when you start saying, you know, here's what our charge is, let's develop the charge, let's develop the purpose, let's develop where we're going, and how are we gonna get there? So first develop and determine who the committee is gonna be comprised of, and what number of people you're talking about, these different numbers. Get that taken care of first and have the committee in place. Then start talking about what is our purpose, because the purpose of what Lisa thinks and what Eric thinks may be different. So getting that consensus in place about what is the purpose of the committee to start with. And then start moving forward from there. And then, because you may end up wanting to have, like you were talking about, getting other samples, and I know you have them, but just as an example, getting other samples. You may end up breaking up part of the, what'd you say, 15 people you're looking at?
It depends,
10.
Yeah.
So whatever, so having, you know, maybe 2 people assigned to be getting policies, and then having 2 people assigned to contact the different school district or something like that, where you're delving out work and getting things taken care of, instead of waiting once a month to be getting all this information, because if they're getting these things, by the time you have the next meeting, they've already done the work and they're bringing it and putting it out for the committee to start talking about and working on. But
So
I
I
think the
think
first
there's
thing
two,
is
you have
that
2 points, and one is, yes, the schedule. I think we could look at what we talked about as a projected idea. I mean, I think we just really wanted to give people an idea of what the time commitment was gonna look like, whether it was the first Monday of the month, the second Tuesday, you know, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, so I think part of this is because it is a board-driven committee, because theoretically, we could meet at a meeting just like we're doing now and hash it out and do it. And I mean, we have the right to do that and then bring, put it out there, bring it up for a vote. The reason why we wanted to form the committee and do this in a larger position is because the IASB does encourage us to not just, have it be reflective of the 7 of us or 3 of us or whoever is on the committee, because we may not be representative of our community as a whole, even though we're elected, whatever. So
Great.
trying to get the community stakeholders and stuff in. However, because it is a board committee, and like what Dr. Myers was saying, we can't let it, I mean, that's why I think we needed to, dictate if we're gonna do say about once a month till about the spring, we want to give at least some ground rules and parameters of what we're gonna do so that it doesn't get out of control and blow out of proportion, because we don't want to waste anybody's time, any of the staff members' time, any of the community members' time, or our time doing that. So I think we're looking here brainstorming, and why we're doing it at a special board meeting is so we do get more feedback. The stuff that we started with are very initial starts, and clearly we are going to be looking to the other community members to help craft some of that.
Yeah, and.
But because we do have to have open meetings, we do have to then involve some of the other stakeholders. We kind of have to have some parameters in place. And if, just like with the school board meetings that we already have a calendar, we can then all put them in our calendar and plan our lives around them, rather than going, oh, that doesn't work for me. Because if you get 12, 15 people in a room, you're never going to find a date that works for
Right.
everybody all the time anyway.
No, I understand.
So I think that was the general idea. And not that you're not wrong, but since I think the board members are the ones that are driving this particular committee, this way we get the community members that can participate on these days. And that's where we said we'd like to, be nice to have it on Zoom so that we give access to more people that wouldn't otherwise be able to come down here because of daycare or childcare or whatever. But at the same time, if it's also going to impact our staff and our resources as a district, we have to weigh that, balance that too. But But then if somebody knows about it ahead of time, they may be able to arrange.
Right.
I don't care if they know it's once a month as opposed to every
That's-
Monday or
That's
something. So I think that's,
And I would certainly envision committee members, no matter who they are, being very active and having specific to-dos and tasks, you know, that.
we're not gonna break those down until we get to that.
Yeah,
but-
yeah,
yeah.
but like we do now, we do the work before we get to the meeting, not at the meeting, so. Okay, so where are we at? We had, I just had written, I know you were sort of taking those too. We had kind of put down a draft purpose statement. You want to read those out loud? Do you want to go over that? Do you wanna- Anything, so the purpose that I had, and we could add to this, craft a proposed equity policy with, let's see, community input to be presented to the board of the district D75. I had something about equity can mean different things to different people, but that thing is more.
I think we should also say to recommend a draft policy to the board for eventual adoption and approval or something to that effect. Again, making it clear that just because the committee meets and decides on a policy,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean we're gonna pass it.
Right.
Just like it doesn't mean that every community member who participates, we're gonna adopt their position either. But we don't want to stifle input and communication so that we can have that, consider that. I don't know if we want to use somewhere the word stakeholders, because that was one of the big pieces from the IASB. And that's why we were kind of doing, I'm not insisting on it, I'm just wondering if maybe,
And again, let's think about translations, because stakeholder is the best word, you know, rather than saying. You know, you know what I'm saying?
I don't disagree there, I was just throwing it out there. I'm okay to leave it up.
What do you think? I mean, how do we?
We can stay away from stakeholder for clarity purposes, I guess.
Yeah.
I think we get it and we understand it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Totally fine.
just for the community's sake.
I think that should be something we are sensitive to all along the way, that language is going to be very important. English language and Spanish language and any other language we want is translated into. Language is going to be very, very.
I guess one question I did have, I guess, from what Ray said earlier, what, for those of you, I think, Eric, you mentioned it, for those who have been on other committees similar to this, what is the timeline to have a full committee? I know we're talking about like long-term when we're gonna finish, but like when are we gonna have like our first full committee meeting?
Oh, how long?
And if
So
we
I
said-
think
we
we're
said spring to
doing- I don't
end, but
know,
How are we gonna
that's-
start? Like,
We,
is it a month? from
we're
now?
doing it different than D120 did, so. There was more of a word exercise with limited.
Yeah, I just asked. 'cause so.
Well, let's,
I mean, I think one of the reasons why we're trying to sit here and craft, what do we want it to look like? And one of the reasons I asked was, what is the time frame, so that we can sort of backtrack that
back it off.
and figure out what we want to do so that we can step. pieces
Do we
along the
want
way.
to seat a committee by September? That's 2 months, you know, so then we have to fine tune our purpose statement, have some sort of application and then get it out there. Whatever out there means.
I think that makes sense, so that hopefully if we can seat a committee in September, having a couple then meetings, have tasks sort of be
Right.
assigned, come back, discuss them. I would hope that it's going, that in 3 to 4 full committee meetings, we can make progress and have a good, That's what I'm saying. I mean, because we could meet all year if we really wanted to, but I don't know that any of us want to make it that big of a challenge, nor do I think community members want, to be that quite involved. That's why I was kind of asked, like, what is our index, so we can sort of backtrack it. I think that we have to expect that the holidays will be busy, and that's probably not gonna get a lot of time. Lots of different holidays, because I will say this year, all the Jewish holidays are really early, meaning Hanukkah's in November and December, and all of that, and so that all backs up and impacts people, and then we have the traditional holidays, and then it'll be the winter. So I think then planning to have at least a few, in the cold winter time, so that we can hopefully have a proposed one in spring makes sense to me.
So between August through October, you have 7 meeting dates that don't back up. 3 in August, 2 September, 2 October.
What, since you have those dates out, and I put myself away, because we've also got Rosh Hashanah is early there.
So I'm sorry, what's it you're referring to?
These are
Dates?
possible meeting dates.
Possible
Oh,
meeting dates,
possible.
the Mondays.
Oh.
So I can send those dates. I can just send them, so just, yeah, I'm to the groups, you can look at them. Just so you got an idea, because Freddie asked, when can the first committee meet? Well, if you need 2 meetings to prep before getting the whole group together, you've got at least 3 in August to work. August 2nd is one of them, so that's a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah.
So I'd rather
Yeah.
do 2.
That might be a little too quick.
That's not,
Yeah.
I mean, the 6th is Labor Day, but then also it's Rosh Hashanah,
yeah,
so
I
I'm
think
guessing that's
these
not.
first 2, maybe we could just do whatever works for people, for us, so that we can get
Get it,
the
get it done.
structure.
Yep.
We can be more nimble that
Yep.
before we get
10 more people almost.
That's August 16th and 30th. September 13th and 23rd. 27th, 13th to
Oh, I
27th.
thought you said 23rd.
I probably did.
Like, what day is that? That's a
13 and 27.
Thursday.
I can do any of those, so you pick some, tell me.
Okay, so for the next meeting, we want to have our purpose for final review. We want to have, we have our.
Diana?
Said, do we want like a draft application?
I think that makes sense, so that we
So-
can try to get it out.
Yeah.
I can, since you've already divided up some of those other topics that I can't really help with, I can help with, I guess Google Drive is not me. I can help.
We know that.
Yeah, that's why I didn't volunteer, but I'm like,
But it wasn't you.
yeah,
It
well,
was them.
who knows? I'm not blaming it, whatever, I'm not a Google literate. But I can try to put together an application.
Yeah, we can. Eric, do you know, or anybody else know about, how you solicited your staff members? Did you have a formal application that we can just then seal?
So we sent so Dan sent an email out to all the staff, soliciting interest, and then when there were some packets where there was like maybe not as much interest, and then like following up in those buildings. when we were
So,
able to get
because
a
again,
scan.
you had a captive audience, or,
Yeah, so we did have interest, right? So to Eric's point earlier that there are, there's a substantial amount of people, and there were, a couple of reminders. So I think we really have people that are very invested in that. From the staff.
I'll work on the purpose statement. Sometimes I need to do shower.
Same application for all community members and staff. Change, but we're not gonna ask.
I don't think this is going to be a super complicated.
No, I don't
see
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah, yeah,
being-
yeah,
no,
yeah, I
yeah.
would think so, yes.
Here's one thing I want, so is there any more discussion about kind of what our next meeting is looking like to have those elements in place? Do we want to set that date right
I think
now?
that makes sense.
I did forget my phone.
Oh,
16th works better for me.
16th.
30th,
Okay.
The 30th, I won't be able to.
Okay. I'm trying to think, so let me just talk out loud. Son goes back to school, either here or here. Okay,
we could tentatively, since we've got
Yeah.
the four dates, we can tentatively say one, and then we can finalize that once you
Okay.
check your calendar.
I don't want it to be September, I think that's too long to go for next.
For the next meeting, no, I agree, but I'm just saying, maybe if we're setting the next, say two. That's all.
Yeah. Okay, for us, yes.
I mean, the 16th and the 13th of September might, since that's about a month apart
Yeah,
from one another, that might make sense as a tentative dates for right now. And then you can look at your schedule and
I think I'm
if there's a
okay.
problem, then
I think I'm
Yeah,
okay.
September, I'm fine either way. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, even if I took them back. I'll be back. Okay. All right. And so now just free for all. Anybody that has any thoughts, comments, something they want to suggest, and I have one, but I've done a lot of talking, so I'll wait. No? Okay,
I'm not on the committee, I'll throw some up. I think you're alluding to it, wanting to make sure we have representation, but I want to make sure as a committee, are we making sure that, or is it a priority that the members that we do have come to participate in the committee are representative of our entire community? So that we don't have one demographic dominating over
Oh,
another
yeah.
as we go through the
Sure, yeah.
conversation. So I
no,
I don't know how we say that, but I think that's something as we go in and we have participation, we want to make sure people coming into it, we are looking to make sure we're well represented.
well, and that could be a question, what unique perspective do you think you can bring to this committee? Or the phrasing could be something along, and when we craft the invitation, we could say, kind of, we are looking for everybody in the Mundaline community, it's something, the words will come, but
Even Spanish speaking only parents or community members, I think we can encourage. I don't know if that's ever been done or if that's, I don't know how the translation aspect would go. Yeah. Edit, I'm on the committee, so I can certainly help, but I think even encouraging that would be,
yes,
important for
definitely,
us
we
to
are
convey that
especially
message.
looking
Yes.
for. And then put some examples.
Yep. That was actually the only thing I was gonna mention is.
Yeah.
Let's make everyone feel comfortable.
No,
to join the
exactly.
committee.
And that kind of begs another question too, then, do we need, no offense to your Spanish skills,
Oh,
but do we
no.
need somebody just dedicated to translating at our meeting? So you could focus, or another member who's
Yeah,
bilingual
that's why I
can
asked if it's ever been
focus,
done. I don't know.
but do we need any other resources?
You want to share what?
I
we've
would
done
say, isn't
before,
there
Jane?
a,
Yeah, so we, for our bilingual parent, well, just some places to see. Some of that leadership is within our bilingual parent advisory committee that meets monthly. Our leadership team meets monthly, but then also we have parent nights that multiple families attend. And then also with our partnership with the high school, Universidad de Padres, and then something really cool that we did a few years ago, I think Dr. Meyer's second year or third year, was that we had our parent ambassadors that we wanted to recruit. We wanted the parent ambassador group to be able to reflect our student body. And so we were able to recruit 5 parents that for whom the translator would be a big support. And so then we had translation at the meetings. And then we even had icebreakers and things so that we could mix up the seating and all of that. So, and then typically in the last few years, and definitely before I was here too, Mr. George Moncada, for all of the parent nights that we do host, he typically is there to translate. And if he's not available, we have several backup eager staff that would be willing to do this one.
And that would be something to mention
Yeah.
in
Yes.
the
Yes.
appeal
Yeah.
that we will have.
do we need to restrict that to just Spanish translators? I mean, I don't want to throw out
That's what I'm saying.
translators if we're.
Are there other languages that you already, if you were trying to meet the student population that you
So we,
found the need to?
yeah, we have access to, large, to translators that will physically come in the building as well. So we have like different options, we have headset options, there's just all kinds of options. We're able to do that to accommodate families for IEP meetings or other events. We haven't had, we've done headsets at high school for things before. With COVID, we didn't really have any headset related type things, but we could bring in a translator. If someone was interested in a translator was required, we could certainly seek out a translator, absolutely. We've done that in the past for specific.
Just letting it be known that it's not limited to English speaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that might be a
Families,
nice job.
And maybe not limiting it to Spanish so that
Right.
we
Yeah,
do
yeah.
get all of that, but just saying it's not only English, so if you have an interest, please apply. And with that said, should we, once we have an application that we approve, should we have it translated? And into how many languages?
Maybe we can get an idea from the district, like what are our top languages, Polish, Spanish, Vietnamese, what are our top other languages of our families?
So typically we send it out in English and Spanish because our subgroups, when you have a subgroup of 20 or more, that's when you kind of have those
Oh,
requirements and stuff. And so that's why when you see our signage for registration, so if you see the English and Spanish, because that's our subgroup that meets that threshold. But certainly we've been able to, provide translation where it's been necessary. And we can even put that at the top, like if you need.
yeah, it could be part of the
if you need
application,
translation, Let us know, contact us.
So do it in English and Spanish, but knowing that we're gonna
knowing we might.
put something on it that it's open to anybody, not just. English and Spanish.
Okay, so that's another task and I can take it too, unless, Freddie, you want to, or for crafting like the invitation language, not just the application, but the announcement and then we can.
Really come up with a whole plan to help promote this. Right? So we talked about Spanish speakers, we talked about other types of individuals that might want to be on this. As diverse as it is, we need to promote in diverse corners of the community. So it's, you got one message, you can figure out how to fit it in all together.
Maybe we'll have something on.
So I'll draft the application.
I can
Do you want to work on the invitation? That way I can take a crack at it?
Yeah, and then we can all just,
We'll share.
build on each other, because that's how this thing's good. So then I was also thinking, once we have our group, like how to do some team building, how to bring positivity to the table. And I know Christy and I have done and attended different seminars, webinars on a wide range of topics. And so some of them, I was kind of thinking, would it be nice to have a guest person, for 10, 15 minutes? I'm sure, we can all brainstorm on this, so I don't have this, this was just an idea that I wanted to bounce off of you. So one of the webinars that I went to that really had a big impact on me was put on by my son's college. And it was the provost, and it was all about having community discussions and bringing different voices to the table. So I was like, well, what if I just tossed off a note to this guy, explained who I was, like, hey, would you like to come, would you speak at our meeting for 10, 15 minutes about what you've done to bring communities together and to have difficult dialogues, but yet have it be a positive experience. So things like that. And maybe each of you might have been and done something like that somewhere before. I know somebody that's just, it has nothing to do with diversity, but you know, a person that just kind of brings people together, you know, in a fun way, just to set, you know, like the first meeting we have. So that's kind of where I was thinking, of what would a first meeting look like for the fully seated committee that starts off positive on a nice note and kind of sets the tone and brings us together. So that was kind of my long way of saying, like, how do we accomplish that on the first
That's
meeting?
good to do for all of us, I guess, and bring it to the
Yeah.
next meeting and we can just.
Yeah, just so.
I think
so
it's a
again,
great
it's
idea.
so-
Yeah.
And then we can bring, you know, like, hey, I found this person, they're free, they'll do 10 minutes, they'll do that. Or this person, you know, charges whatever, you know.
That may also be a reason why we would want to do the Zoom rather than the stream, because that may open our
Yeah, that
possibilities
opens up-
to those
Yeah.
speakers.
And-
Where
and I
if we
think
have to have them come in person, that may not
To
be possible.
build on that, if we also have the Zoom link for the community, then it's more visibility to yes, this is a positive thing. This is, you know, something to be excited about and understand and maybe something different than they've seen before. Okay, so that's all of our to-dos is to think about kind of that first meeting and setting the tone. And further meetings along the way, you know. How to get productive meetings, whatever it is, you know, just the number of.
We can bring our ideas to the next
Yeah.
meeting so that we can try to book those people or plan them out for the next few meetings.
Help us come around too. I mean, anybody else? Shane? Here? Sarah? Amy, any other thoughts?
Only comment that, you know, I'm just thinking about the Zoom meeting you're talking about. If you really want to be diverse in language and all that, we have to make sure that the whole meeting and all the documents and everything 100% is translated. So that would be not been in a Zoom meeting for a person where it's translated 100%. But as long as we can do that,
Oh,
and
yeah.
all the documents are translated as well. We do a presentation on the screen in Zoom, make sure that's both languages. That's the only thing.
I've seen captioning that translates, but
I was
how
gonna ask
accurate that
about
is or how that
captioning, yeah.
gets done.
So the captioning we tried once and it wasn't. The better option that we did was like a voice over. It was there was like a little bit of a time delay, but you could hear everything. George, well, Ms. Drake was talking and then everyone was listening to the Spanish. Mr. Moncala could hear it. And then some other ways we've done it, like for example, when we're doing a dual language presentation, is we simply did it the old fashioned way on Zoom where we went slide by slide. You know, Stephanie had one in Spanish and I had one in English, or sorry, Stephanie had one in English, I had one in Spanish, and so on and so forth. And so we can do it a number of different ways, but we've been able to explore those.
I will say having participated, that slows it down because then it makes it twice as long if you're having to do each slide.
Yeah, the only hard part is that if you want collaboration from the families being able to work together and really hear one another, then it is sort of in a way, kind of like two separate meetings, if you're not
Yeah.
kind of going slide by slide, but we could look further at the captioning as well. And then with the actual translation of the documents, I would just say when you're ready, so Peter, we have two of our staff, so on the screen that assists us with those translations.
And at the same time, those are the kind of challenges that what we're addressing. Different. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to bring people together, differences, and get them to work together. That's the type of hurdle we're gonna have.
And I didn't mean to exclude Anna or the tech guys, if you guys had any thoughts about anything we talked about too, since a lot of it has to do with tech.
Or your own personal streams.
So, one thing that might be helpful as we work through the process of trying to figure out what Z is, or should say, is maybe try to be very clear up front what it's not, what its intent is not. And-
Thought of that
and-
earlier today. I'm glad you reminded me.
Right, and it's, I mean, we haven't had that at this district, but I'm sure we're watching the news and seeing what other districts are facing, and buzzwords like critical race theory is coming up. There are other terms of art that are coming up. This is not addressing that. This is creating a foundation for culturally responsive education, and that can not only include curriculum, but meeting our students and families where they are, be it race, be it socioeconomic status, be it language, be it sexual orientation, those things. So it just might be helpful to, as much as we're trying to figure out what we want, be very clear what we don't want, so people don't feel the need to fill in that column.
That might be addressed well in the purpose as well as the invitation and the application. That's gonna kind of go
Yeah.
through all three. So we'll have to keep that in mind as we're drafting our first drafts to take a look at. That's good. Good one, me, yeah.
I don't have the script. Do we have,
Take over.
I have to make a motion?
Yes.
So before we do, is there any other conversation points, comments? All right. I move that we adjourn the meeting at what time? 7:50.
I don't think we need a second for that one, but we can all in favor? Aye.
What time, Mr. Howard left?
I didn't know that he left the meeting. I thought maybe we did.
What?
6:56.
All right.
Either way.
Thank you.